had become deadly serious. As stories of shootings and serial killers grabbed the headlines, Glasgow was witnessing a more widespread violence problem. Street fighting gangs were back. The infamous gangs of the 30s had been products of the slums, yet many of the new gangs sprang from shiny housing schemes. Perhaps modern homes were not the cure-all planners hoped for. Hugh Collins was one gang member and embodied a culture of ingrained street violence.
We always carried knives, always. If you didn't carry a knife, there was something wrong with you.
Collins was the son of an armed robber and renowned hardman, and as a teenager formed his own gang.
We became the centre of this group that just started to become the Shamrock. The gang thing started to shape up throughout Glasgow. In the Carlton, you had the Tongs, Mary Hall, you had the Mary Hall Fleet. But we were a nasty wee crew.
Throughout the 60s and 70s, Collins was in and out of prison for robbery and assault. But in a chaotically violent world, he stood out as a chaotically violent man.
There was a couple of people that had names. I've done them. Just for the slightest excuse, just I either stabbed them or slashed them and went, get to this is my pub, you know, that kind of thing. And I get hooked on danger. I became a loose cannon in a way.
Collins's behaviour began to alienate even his own gang, and they decided to teach him a lesson with a brutal ambush.
I just saw his face coming out of a doorway. He done a cross thing with me, a razor, a butcher's cleaver, whacked me right in the jaw, got me up the back of my ear to there, and my jaw broke a bit of the teeth. I've heard all my teeth crunching.
Collins went in search of revenge. He headed to a city centre bar where his former pals were drinking. With them was Bill Mooney, a member of a rival mob who'd become friendly with the rest of the Shamrock. Though Collins only knew Mooney vaguely, in this world being in the wrong place at the wrong time could be deadly.
When I walked in, the place was jam-packed.
Collins and his ex-gang were tooled up and primed to fight each other. All they needed was a trigger.
A tumbler flew by me and I just went, this is it. And as Mooney went into his jacket, I just grabbed his arm and it just fell into my hand, the Bowie knife. No, and I just lunged up the way it stuck in his neck. You don't want to really kill people. You think you do, but you're horrified by what you've done. I still get bouts of guilt and I go, I took that guy's life, he might have had kids.
Hugh Collins was sentenced to life for the murder of Bill Mooney. In many ways, he was a throwback to the Glasgow hardmen of the 30s and a forerunner of the gangs of today, a man out to make trouble rather than money. The professional criminal of the 70s was quite different. He was out to make money. For robbers, improvements in bank safes had spelt the end of safe blowing. The result was an explosion in armed robbery.
When the safe blower disappeared, the armed robbers appeared with a double shotgun, you know. There was less chance of being caught. They just fire a shot and disappear.
By 1976, armed robberies had become an epidemic, and the police had to up their game.
That time, there was lots, and I mean lots, of bank robberies and wage robberies going on throughout the city. And I had a squad. We were the first armed response team, and we were actually touring the city every day.
In 1976, one particular armed robbery team was coming to the fore. A team which would become known as the XYY Gang. They specialised in cleverly planned hits on a range of targets, from wage deliveries to banks. Detective Graham Pearson responded to a trademark raid at the Milton Post Office.
That morning a post office van pulled in here And as soon as he'd removed the mail sack containing the cash, they came forward with their shotguns and held him at the pavement. Having got the sack of money, they then made off at high speed with the cash.
That day, the XYY mob took 7 grand. This was far from a one-off. 17 grand was snatched from a wages delivery to hospital, 3 grand from a savings bank. This team wasn't interested in one-off spectaculars, but regular paydays.
Ordinary decent people were being subjected to extreme violence and threats with shotguns. And each week we were out and about looking for the next target.
Police trawled their informers, desperate to uncover the mastermind. Then, after nearly 3 years of raids, police started to hear one name in particular, 49-year-old Walter Norval. Norval had moved with the times. After his old world was torn down, he started again in the new housing schemes. He recruited young hardmen and turned them into a gang of armed robbers. Norval focused on planning, leaving others to get their hands dirty. To this day, he distances himself from his crimes, despite his convictions. And yet, he knows a great deal about a man he calls the boss.
The guy that planned them always went and looked at the place for days, watched when money was getting delivered, and watched when it was the quietest time to do it. And what made the getaway? Always planned the getaway, so he did. That was the boss.
Though his robbers went armed, Norval claims they took great care not to hurt people.
I always used to say to the lads, don't ever hurt anybody in these things. They're only people like yourself that's earning a living. Frighten them, make a noise. That's what they done, just made a heavy noise, threats. That's what it needed.
Norval and his gang may have seen themselves as sensitive armed robbers, but their victims thought otherwise.
They went through a dreadful time. They'd had guns pushed in their face, they'd been sworn at, they'd been assaulted, punched and kicked and pushed around and threatened. It's only a matter of good luck that nobody was killed.
Though the police suspected Norval, they lacked firm evidence, and the raids continued into autumn 1977. Then, out of the blue, one of the gang, Phil Henry, was arrested on a post office robbery, and he shocked cops by turning supergrass.
He gave a voluntary statement detailing who was involved in the gang, what they did, and as I say, gave us some evidence to back that up, physical evidence.
Henry took Pearson up to the old Kirkpatrick Hills outside Glasgow. There they recovered Norval's sawn-off shotgun and thousands of pounds. Norval's heyday with the XYY mob was coming to an end, thanks to Phil Henry.
Phil Henry was a rat. Grassed all his pals, and that was to save his own skin. Nothing but a piece of shit.
With Norval's arrest, Glasgow's epidemic of armed robberies came to an end. Norval and gang were now heading for a series of massive trials. But as so often in Glasgow, the path of justice didn't run smooth. On the eve of Norval's trial, someone dropped a homemade bomb through the skylight of the High Court.
If I could have clapped the guy in the back and done it, because I don't like courts all my life.
It's certainly the first time that I'm aware of that criminals had been as audacious as that.
No one was ever convicted of the bombing. But the trials went ahead and caused a media sensation, fueled by the decision to keep the defendants' names secret.
Accused were given nom de plumes from the alphabet, and that's why they became known as Mr X and Mr Y, and the whole trial became known as the trial of the XYY mob.
7 key players in the newly named XYY mob were convicted, and their names revealed to the public. Walter Norval